Yeah. Yep, thank you. Autry, I want to introduce everyone. Thank you for coming. This is Autrice Campbell Long. She is the VP and Community Development Manager at Truist Bank. And Truist is a wonderful sponsor and partner of Code the Dream. So we're thrilled to have Autrice with us. Those of you who attended her last talk, pretty much it was like Banking 101. She's now going to help us to be debt free. So I will turn it over to Autrice.
Thank you, Pam, and welcome everyone. Andre gave us the shortcut to a debt-free life. Always make more money than you spend. And that is the shortcut, but unfortunately for most of us, it's not always possible. So let's look at some information. Let's see. Can everyone see my screen okay? If you would give me a, let's see, do you have the ability to do like a thumbs up or something? If you can see, okay, I see a thumbs up. Okay, great. And so I just want to share this screen. Our goal is to provide tools and information help you make smart decisions toward your path of being debt free. And so this is just to help you guide you towards your financial future. And I will say for most people, you know, your financial journey is different depending upon where you are in life. So we will make different decisions based on where we are in life. But the first step for anyone to determine how to have a debt-free life is to first figure out where you stand today. I'll ask everybody to put their devices on mute, please. Where you stand today is very important. And I will tell you, every step that we will talk about here today, I have done at several points in my life. So this is not anything this is not a do what I say and not as I do. This is I did this is real. You can do this too. So the first thing you want to do is learn where you stand today, create a realistic budget, talk with lenders, look at how you spend and save, and prioritize your debt payment. Now, this is scheduled to be in 2 different sessions. So the first session today, we're going to get all the way up to probably creating a realistic budget. And then we'll do the rest of it in the second half. What I'm going to ask you to also do is we'll have some homework. So in between these 2 sessions, you're going to have some homework that you'll do that will help us to look at how you spend and save in the second session. So thumbs up. Is that cool with everybody? Okay, I don't see the thumbs up. Okay, we'll keep going. All right, cool. All right, so let's talk about where you stand today. And I'd love to know how many of you have pulled your credit report in the past year. And I don't have a way of doing a survey, so I'm gonna just say if you have pulled your credit report in the last year, put a comment yes in the chat box if you have pulled your credit report in the past 12 months. So I see some people responding. Let's see. Yes. Very good. So we have a couple of people who have pulled their credit report. If you have not, this is something that by law, you can get once a year for free from any of the 3 repositories. And there are 3: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Each of these repositories will give you your credit report for free. And I recommend that you pull all 3, that you not just pull one, because sometimes one will have information that the other one will not have. So it's always good to pull all 3. And because you have the ability to pull 3, you might want to say every 4 months you pull one from one of the different repositories and see if you see something different. So again, This helps you to know a lot of things about where your credit and where you stand. And you have to start with this. This gives you a baseline. There are a couple of things that you want to look at once you get your credit report. And we're going to go to this page, and this shows you. Oh, okay. So let's talk about how you can access it. You can go to annualcreditreport.com, or you can call this number, or you can mail in a request. So most of us will do one or two. You will do either annualcreditreport.com or you'll call. Now, let me say, if any of you have heard that annoying commercial, freecreditreport.com, let me tell you, it is not free. Do not go to freecreditreport.com. You want to go to annualcreditreport.com. Okay? That is critical. And so once you pull your credit report, we want to look at what is accurate on the report. You want to make sure your name is correct, your address, your age, and any of the work history is correct. And what you're looking for is any time there might be any inaccuracies. And so let's see, I'm going to look at the names here. If there are, so there's some pretty unusual names here. And so you probably are not going to, I don't know, Alex Rodriguez is a pretty common name. And so Alex, you might be the person that you'd have to be very careful, because what happens sometimes when you have a common name, they may put your file in with someone else's. I always use my husband as an example here. He and his nephew have the exact same name, first, middle, and last names. And the only way we can look at a credit report and know whether it's my husband or his nephew is by their age or birth date and social security number. Remember, the people that are putting this information into the system are human, and sometimes they don't always put everything in accurately. And so there have been times when my husband and our nephew would have the information was on the wrong file, in the wrong in the repository's file under the wrong person. So you want to first make sure everything is accurate on your personal information. The next step you want to look at is the accounts that they list. What account information, your payment history. And so what you want to see is if you have any judgments, any liens, or anything negative like that, that's going to come up next. So let's say you had a cell phone bill right out of college and you never paid it and they charged it off. That might show up. Well, let's say you had an apartment with a roommate and the lights weren't, the utility bill was in your name, but you never, and you left and the roommate didn't pay the bill like they were supposed to. That might show up. So those are the kinds of things you want to look at and make sure if there are any judgments, because what might happen, may have happened, especially in like a utility bill, you left, you didn't have a forwarding address, they didn't know how to reach you, they went to court, they got a judgment, and it's on your credit report. And you may not even know it's there. So you definitely want to see if any of those things exist. And the only way you can do that is to pull this credit report and see, okay? Let's say you moved, you were in California and now you're here. Sometimes some of those credit repositories, so if you were in California and you moved from the West Coast to the East Coast, TransUnion might have it and Equifax may not. So that's why it's important to pull all three reports from all three repositories too. Okay, so you want to look at all of those. I suggest to everyone, because I don't, when I'm looking at things visually, I like to highlight the things I need to go back and attack. So I'm going to tell you to buy $1. Everybody's got school supplies on sale now. So go to the Dollar Tree and get you a yellow highlighter. And anything you want to come back to, you want to highlight, okay? So if you see any judgments or anything like that, highlight those and then go to the next thing, is inquiries. So everybody knows that if you have too many, if you don't know, you should know that too many inquiries can lower your credit score. And I will tell you why. Because it looks like you are shopping your credit. So let me use my classic example. You decide you want to buy a car. and you're just looking. You know, these days, used cars are at a premium, but let's say you decide, I've saved up my money, I'm ready to buy a car, and I'm going to look at 5 different dealerships. I don't know if I want a Toyota or a Honda, but I'm going to look. When you go on a used car lot, first of all, here's what I always tell people. Do not give them your real name. Now, I know that's probably a bad thing to tell people, but I have an odd name. There is only one other Artrice in North Carolina that I know of. And so I protect my identity by not telling them my real name, because it used to be, it's not really legal, but what they can do is pull a soft inquiry. And so sometimes what they'll do is they'll go and tell someone, pull this name, and then they'll already know what your credit score is, and they'll know whether or not you're qualifiable or not. And so they'll know whether or not to push hard on trying to sell you something. So the first thing and that will show as an inquiry on your credit. It's kind of sketchy whether it's legal or not, but people do it all the time. That's all I'm telling you. So be careful about inquiries. If you walk through the mall and somebody's saying, if you sign up for our credit card, we'll give you a free t-shirt or a water bottle, don't do it. Every time you do that, they're pulling your credit. So if you want the free t-shirt, and you give them your credit, you give them your information, that's going to show up as an inquiry on your credit report, whether they approve it or not. If you actually want a credit card or something, there are better ways to do it. I wouldn't do it in the mall. If you've been in an airport, there's always an airline that's always trying to get you to apply for one of their credit cards so that you can have an affinity card and get points. Don't do it unless it's something you actually want, because every time you do that, it pulls as an inquiry on your credit. And those inquiries, every time it's done, it looks as though you're shopping your credit, and it can lower your score. Know what credit score, and we'll talk about that later, is comprised of a number of things, but inquiries will make it look odd. Or it lowers the score because it looks like you're doing too much. And then, so then the last thing you want to look at is all of the things listed as yours in your credit. So let's say you have a MasterCard, a Visa, you have a JCPenney's credit card, you bought some furniture from Rent to Own. All of that stuff should be on your credit report. What will not show up are your utilities and cell phones. Those don't show up on your credit report. So anything that's like a utility, Spectrum, AT&T, T-Mobile, none of that typically shows on your credit report, even though they pull a credit report before they will set you up with an account. So any questions so far? You feel free to jump in if you have a question. I just want to go through what to expect when you pull your credit report. Now, if you're going to do it online, if you have the ability to have access to a printer, I would recommend you print it out so that you can make notes and everything on your credit report, because this is going to be your working document for improving your credit going forward. Okay.
What if,
all right,
what if you use something like Credit Karma? Sorry.
So yes, good question. I do use Credit Karma. So Credit Karma is kind of a simulator. It is not based on your actual credit, but what it does is it does pull your credit. It looks at your credit, and it will give you kind of a simulation of what your credit score might be based on what they think the variables are. But it is not going to be your exact credit score as reported by Experian, TransUnion, or Equifax, but it'll be something in the neighborhood. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, so I do use Credit Karma just because it also, what I like about Credit Karma is it's kind of a monitoring. So if you have if someone applies for credit, or if there's a big increase in a credit line, in your credit report, Credit Karma will send you an email. So that, for that reason, I like Credit Karma, because it helps keep me aware of any fluctuations in my account. And they give me a monthly recap of my credit score. Okay, so once you've done that, let's say you found some things on your credit report that are incorrect. And this is probably one of the most important things you need to do. So, okay, when you go get that highlighter, the other thing I want you to do is get a composition book. I don't care if it's spiral, I don't care if it's that old school one that looks like a cow, whatever, but I want you to get some kind of notebook, because I want you to keep all of this in one place, because it is going to be important going forward that you keep track of this. This information is critical to you moving forward. And so you want to keep, documentation is key here. So let's say you found up here a credit report that was actually not yours, but your niece, your nephew, your aunt, your grandma, somebody, you might have a similar name, or maybe it's some random person that just happens to have the same name as yours, but you don't have any relationship to them at all. And that could happen as well. And so what you want to do, again, remember we highlighted those things we want to go back to. So if you find that there are any errors, this letter, and I will make sure that, I don't know if I sent this deck to you or not, but we'll send you this deck, and so you'll have this actual letter. And you can use this letter as is and send it to Equifax, TransUnion, or the other one, what is it, Equifax, TransUnion, and anyway, you know, those three, and tell them if they've listed something that's not accurate and you want to have it removed. Important, again, keep a copy of the letter for your records, because they have a certain amount of time, and I want to say it's 60 days to either respond or fix it on your credit, okay? They have to, in writing, tell you, and they can do it by email. We have, you know, we received your letter, and you can send these letters by email as well. We received your communication, we're gonna fix it, and here's how. And so you want to keep documentation of when you sent the letter, who you sent it to, and why you sent it, okay? Expect a response in 4 to 8 weeks, and I'm pretty sure it's 60 days that they have to respond to you one way or the other. Let's say it's something that you paid off and you don't know why it's still reporting as unpaid, then you need to call and ask about that too. Because anything that's on there that should not be there, that's negative, lowers your credit score. And this is about getting your credit score in a place where you are able to do the things that you want to do. So this is why this is so important, because you to get to a standing of getting your credit in a good place, you want to make sure you've eliminated any of the negative things. Let's say you have a judgment and it wasn't supposed to be yours. Again, you want to reach out and say, this is not mine. I don't know who this person is. And so you want to make sure that they have corrected that information as well. So this letter is the key to getting all of that information corrected initially from your credit report to get your score to a better place, okay? So let's talk a little bit about credit scores. And we talked about Credit Karma. So a bad score is anything below 620. An average score is anywhere between 620 and 720. It's average, high sixes to the low sevens, right? And then anything over 760 or higher is excellent. So you want to strive to be excellent, but if you're here, it takes time. And so that's kind of, you know, the highest score is an 850. And I've never met anybody that's an 850, but I have some sister-in-laws who are retired teachers. And if I pull theirs, they probably are close to an 850. But for the most part, most people are in that 760 or higher range that have good credit scores. And that's what you want to strive for. At 760, you're not paying extra for stuff. You're able to get anything you want, because in this range, and especially in this range, if you go to pay, if you need car insurance, your rate may be higher. Your homeowner's insurance may be higher. There are a lot of things you may or may not be able to get an apartment at this range. So there are a lot of things that are a disadvantage when your score is low that you want to work to improve so that you have better access to the things that are available to you. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
All right, perfect. All right, so let's talk about what makes your score. And we talked a little bit about this before, but this, I think, is one of the important things, if anything, we talk about today. So the first thing is your overall credit history. That is the biggest chunk. So from the very first day that you had credit to now is your credit history. So I have some credit cards that I've had since for probably 30 years. And the reason I keep them, even though I don't always use them, is because that credit history is important. To have that long-term credit history of a card that I own that has had good history keeps my score up high. So the longer, sometimes people will say, well, if I pay it off, should I close it? And the answer can be maybe, maybe not, only because the length of your history is important. So if you have a credit card that maybe you struggle to keep it paid up, once you get it paid off, you may want to keep it, because then because the longevity becomes more valuable to your credit score than the payment history. Does that make sense? Okay. And then the next big thing is the total amount of debt that you owe. So what you don't want is to have all of let's say you have 2 credit cards, and let's say the limits are $5,000 and you have both of them at $4,999. That will lower your score. What you want is to have these cards, but not have them at their limit. Ideally, in a perfect world, if it's possible, what you want to do is pay them off every month, because that is the fastest way to move your credit score up. Because what it shows is, even though you have this is debt that you can afford because you're paying it off every month. So that is what you want to work toward as an ideal situation. That will keep your score higher. So if you have cards, but they're maxed out all the time, that will lower your score, okay? So what you want is to have the cards to show that you have them and you want to use them, but you want to pay it off every month. So let's say you have a MasterCard. And we'll talk a little bit about some different kinds of credit cards. But let's say you have a MasterCard and you use it to buy groceries, or you use it only for gas, or you use it only for your DoorDash purchases or whatever. And then you pay it off every month. That is the ideal situation, because you're using it, but you're paying it off. So you're not maxing it out every month. And that's important. Okay, so I told you wrong. I'm sorry, I looked at that wrong. Your payment history is the most important. And I meant to, I said that incorrectly. So payment history is always gonna be critical. And then the next thing is your length of credit. I apologize, I read that wrong. So let's talk about payment history. So anything over 30 days is going to show as a negative mark. Anything over 60 days is a double negative, and anything over 90 days is probably going to show. Most companies are going to start charging you off at 90 days. Some of them will go to 120 days past due. And so what you never want, let's say you forgot, and this happens to everybody. Let's say you have a credit card and you don't use it that often, and you did use it and you forgot to make the payment on time, that's going to show 30 days. As soon as you know that you've forgotten to pay that payment, you want to make it, because this lags actually about 30 days behind. So let's say the payment was due yesterday and you didn't realize it until today. It's going to show 30 days past due, but as soon as you get that money in, it's not going to really show 30 days on your credit report, because it'll go in before they have time to report it, as a rule. And so payment history is critical. If you have any kind of credit, car loan, any kind of debt that you have been slow to pay or not able to pay and has been charged off, those things will figure into your credit history. And then we talked about the length of your credit here. So the length of your credit history, again, is important, and why you don't want to close out accounts, because that may impact your credit score. New credit. Remember, we talked about inquiries. You don't want to have a bunch of new credit. You want to have what you have, maintain it well. But if it looks like you're getting a bunch of new credit, when I do workshops for people who might be considering buying a home, what I tell them is, once you have decided I'm going to buy a house, don't get anything. Don't buy a car. People get excited and they go out and buy furniture in anticipation, and they buy it on credit, and they could ruin their credit score before they ever close on the house. So the rule of thumb is, because all of this impacts your credit score, so the amount of new credit will impact your credit score. So if you're at a point where you're getting ready to buy a house, you don't ever want to go into any debt. You don't even want to have an inquiry, because all of that's going to impact your credit score. And then the overall mix of credit. And what this means is, let's say you have a car loan, or let's say you have one credit card, and let's say you have a payday loan. Now, payday loans are illegal in North Carolina, but we know people are getting them online. Anything like that, or let's say you have a bank loan. So they will look at this mix. What they don't want to see is a whole bunch of credit cards and nothing else. What they don't want to see is a bunch of payday loans. That will pull your score down. What they want is a healthy mix. So under a typical, credit mix would be maybe a car loan, maybe a couple of credit cards, maybe a store credit card, a MasterCard, a Visa, and then maybe one other thing. So you want to have a mix of stuff. It shouldn't look, you shouldn't have, 5 car loans. That looks weird. Or 10 credit cards. Both of those are extremes and both look weird and will lower your credit score. Okay. Let's see. All right. So any questions there? I'll stop. Anyone have a question about the mix?
Actually, can I ask a question? Like, for example, for myself, like when I check my FICO score, like it tells me the only thing, like keep it low, the lack of the length of the installment, and it said like such an auto loan or student loan. Actually, like I didn't get any student loan. I get like auto loan one time, and I paid it in short time. Actually, in 6 months I paid, but I don't know, this something shown, and like, is it better to, when you get loan, not pay early? And for example, if you get 3 years loan, not paying early is lowering my credit score?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So remember, I told you the best way to increase it is to get a credit card, use it, and pay it off every month. That will move your score up faster than anything. So, because even though you think you're doing the right thing, and absolutely from a debt perspective, paying off early is actually a good thing, but from a credit score perspective, it can be a negative. And I can't explain why that's the equation they use, but it is. That's because from a creditor standpoint, they want you to use the credit. They don't want you to have it and not use it. And so that's why you're being dinged for paying it off early. So to improve that score, I would suggest to you get something, a Visa, MasterCard, or any of those things. Use it when you go to the grocery store, get gas or whatever. You know, don't put too much on it. Put on it what you can afford to pay off every month. But you'll notice that your score will increase pretty fast when you do that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I know it doesn't make sense. It seems counter to, lowering your debt, but that's how credit score calculations are made. That's how the algorithm works for credit scores. And I can't make it make sense, but it is what it
Yeah,
is.
actually, I was thinking if I pay early, maybe it can help to increase my credit score, but it doesn't work like that way. And
Right. That's right. That's right. Yes. Because from a creditor standpoint, they want to get all of that interest income from you. And by paying it off, you cut them off. So you did the right thing. And I'm not saying it's a negative. I'm just saying that from the algorithm, it shows that they weren't able to get what you need. They weren't able to do what they wanted more interest out of you. That make sense?
yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
So
Any other
what if
questions?
it's a credit card that you have like to establish your credit that you're using your own money towards it? Like,
A secured credit card?
yes.
That works too, because all of that gets reported to the credit bureau. So that works. Again, use it, pay it off, use it, pay it off every month, pay it off on time. That is the best way. So it doesn't matter what kind of credit card it is, and a secure credit card works just like an unsecured credit card. So yes, absolutely. In fact, when we talk to people who might have recently had a bankruptcy, that is what we recommend. Get a secured credit card. And for those of you who may not know what that is, if you have a low credit score, or let's say that you're just starting out, one of the ways that you can build your credit is to get a secured credit card, which means that you have a savings account, let's say $500, and you secure that credit card with the $500. So your credit limit and your savings account are the same. So you'll never be able to spend over that. And the way it works is your activity still gets reported to the credit bureaus, but you're covered from the bank perspective, because if for some reason you don't pay, we'll just take the money out of your savings account. But in the meantime, you're able to build your credit. So yes, that works perfectly. Okay, any other questions? Those were both good questions.
Yeah, I got a question. I know you get asked all the time. Medical bills, thousands and thousands of dollars.
Okay, so Kevin, you can't see my gray hair, but I've been doing this a long time. And in the old days, medical bills would really tear someone's credit score to shreds. Over time, they have realized that it does not work to do that. And so those are one of the few categories that don't impact your credit score as negatively as it used to. But what does still impact your credit score is student loans. So medical bills are not as bad. They realize that, if you're sick and you have debt, and you probably are too sick to really deal with it. And they also recognize there's so many people in America, even today, who still are uninsured. So the medical bills don't have as much of an impact on your score as they used to, but student loans will. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Good questions, all. Yes. Any more? Okay. All right. So the next thing, once you pull the credit, you got your composition book, your spiral notebook, or whatever you're going to use, and you've got your highlighter. Then we want to look at what is on the credit report. We want to look at what bills we're not paying on time and figure out how we need to change that. We want to look at any bills that are reporting past due. And look at keeping, so we talked about length of credit, keep low or zero balance on your credit card. So if those are, you have whatever bills you have, you want to try to figure out how to pay them down, but not pay them off, or pay them to be, to get them down. Avoid any new credit and be cautious with companies that claim they can raise your credit. So you probably heard the commercials that companies that say they can increase your credit score. I hear them on the radio all the time. So let me tell you what they do. That letter that I just showed you here, they send a letter like this to all of your creditors that might have a negative credit report, and they dispute everything that's negative on your credit report. And so because the law says that until we clear it up, the credit bureau has to take all of that off of your credit report. What they'll do is put it in like a suspense form. So it takes it off of your credit for that 60 days while they're investigating. But what happens is it comes right back. So if they dispute something and that creditor says, oh yeah, they really do owe this money and this is how much they owe and this is how slow they paid, it comes right back on your credit report on the 61st day. So that's the problem with using those companies. They don't have a magic bullet because no magic bullet exists. The easiest way to increase your credit score is to continue, like I said, get a credit card and pay it off every month, pay a zero balance, use it and pay it off to a zero balance every month. That is the fastest way to increase your credit score. But these companies do not have a magic bullet and they cannot fix anything on your credit scores. Okay. Again, we talked about inquiries. Inquiries look suspicious to creditors. Try to pay off what you have and make sure if you have any judgments or liens, those are the first things you want to try to attack. Those are the first things you want to go back and find out what they are and try to figure out, how do I get this stuff off of my credit? Because those are the things that you want to tackle first. So let's say you pulled your credit report and this is the debt. You've got credit cards, car loans, student loans. You might have the credit. This is how much you owe today, okay? And you want to put those balances in there. You want to put the interest rates in. And let's say you, going back to what Andre said, you realize that what you owe and what the payment amount is more than you're actually making an income. So then you have some decisions to make. Do I want to close out a credit card? Do I want to stop using a credit card? Do I want to sell a car? These are very personal choices to make, but what you want to do is try to get this debt in line based on where your income is. And I always recommend interest rates are important because that is the hidden factor that may impact how good or bad this account should be. So sometimes if you have a very high interest rate, and if you have a low credit score, you will have a high interest rate, then you want to look at both of those things. Yes, Adriana. Did I say it right?
Sorry, I have a question. It's not related to whatever you are showing right now, but my question is, how good is to have like 2 credits? For example, I have an account, like I have a company in California, and with that company you can have a credit. But how good is to have both personal and with this company that you have to be able to work as independent contractor? So how good is to put the credit in your company or personal? That's my question.
So you have your own company.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to know, I recommend, it depends. So you can do both. It depends on what it is you're trying to build. If your company is something that you want to grow and expand, and you think you want to borrow money in your company name, you need to build that credit for your company, okay? Most small businesses are sole proprietorships, and so at the end of the day, the income and the debt actually comes to that individual. So you need to assess what's important to you if you are, and how your company is structured. So let's say your company is a partnership and it's you and two other people, then you definitely want to borrow in that company's name, because that way then the responsibility is spread across the three people. But if it's your company and you're a sole proprietor, but you want to be able to borrow in the company's name, then I would keep it separate. Did that answer the question?
So the best is if I am by myself with this little company, it's to get or borrow money like the company or personal. Because if I decide to buy something little like a house, I prefer to do with my personal credit instead of the company credit.
Absolutely. You don't want to buy, you don't want to buy the house in the name of the company. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm not saying that one is better than the other. It depends on how you want to use that credit. So for your home, you definitely want to buy it in your name, and you want the credit to be reflected in your name. If you've pulled your credit and you know what your credit score is and it's okay, then I would say keep things separate like they are. However, let's say you want to get your credit score up and the company's credit is good, then you may want to combine that account into yours or change that account into your personal name. But I suggest that you might, so it's all in what it is you want, how you want to use that credit. Because I typically say it's good to have separate. It's good to keep personal and business separate. I'm
Okay.
not sure I answered the question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. See, so I guess it depends is my answer. Okay, so I want you to go back and look at your credit report. I want you to list open accounts, and don't worry about this. It doesn't have to be a credit card. It could be whatever, store account, student loans, it could be whatever. But I want you to list all your debt. So when you get this, I want you to put the name, actual name. So if it's JCPenney's, if it's, Ford Motor Credit, if it's, student loan for, Durham Tech or whatever, or if it's, if it's a credit card to that, if it's MasterCard here and JCPenney's here, whatever debt you have, I want you to list it here. I want you to list the balance. I want you to list the current interest rates, because that's important. And I want you to assess here, is this realistic? What do I need to close? What can I keep? What am I using? What am I not using? What is current? What's not current? You want to attack those that are not current first, okay? You always want to get those off of your credit first, because anything that's not current and up to date is dragging your score every month, is still past due. Let me say that again for the people in the back. Anything that's not current is dragging your score down every month, it is still past due, okay? So you want to list all of these things, and the next step you want to do is start working with your budget. So this is step 2, and this is your homework for next week. So this is a budget that we normally, this is just based on, oh wow, that kind of got off the thing here. This is kind of a general projection of where your where you might put a budget. But what I want you to do, and this is going to be your homework for next week, and we got 10 more minutes, is, again, until we meet next time, I want you, that composition book we talked about, I want you to write down everything you spent money on for 2 weeks. Lydia, when is our next meeting?
Our next meeting will be next week.
Next Thursday?
Yes, correct. Next Thursday.
Okay, so you got 1 week. Okay, so for the next week, I want you to write everything, every cup of coffee, every pack of gum, every candy bar, every bag of potato chips, everything you spend money on, every time you go to the grocery store, every time you get gas. I want you to write down for 1 week everything you spend money on. Okay? And you can share this if you want with if you have a significant other or children and you want to have them included. But what you need to do is look and see what your spending patterns are. And I will tell you, most people come back and say, oh my God, I did not realize I was spending this much money on this. I will tell you 2 horror stories. One, I had a lady at Durham Tech, and she was actually a faculty member. And she said, I went back and looked and saw how many times I was buying Bojangle biscuits. And I said, I know. And you think, Bojangle biscuit, what is it, 2 for $5 or 2 for $3? Sometimes when they had the sales, it's cheap. But if you're buying a Bojangle biscuit 3 times a week, it's no longer cheap. Even if you think it is, it's not. Because you could have bought a whole pack of biscuits and a whole pack of sausage for that first one, and the rest of it is Bojangles' profit. The other horror story I tell is that my husband met this guy one time. He was having some drinks with some of his friends, and my husband was having some drinks with some of his friends, and they just happened to be talking, and he told the story. He said, yeah, I'm getting a divorce. And my husband said, oh, really? Sorry to hear it. He said, yeah. He said, you know why? He said, no. He said, my wife goes out and buys Starbucks 3 times a day, every day. Now, 3 times a day, every day. I want you to just count on your fingers and toes. What's that about? $12 a day? And how much would that be at the end of the month? It would be a small car payment. And so he could not, and and she was putting on a credit card. And so he couldn't convince her that that was not. And so they were actually getting a divorce because of her spending habits. And so what this whole tracking your spending will help you see if there are some patterns like that that you need to maybe reconsider. If you are a person that buys lottery tickets a lot, that's something. And it just helps you to see where you're spending money. The exercise, 1, helps you see where you're spending money. And 2, where are places that you might be able to cut out. So if there are things you want to sacrifice or cut out, or, if for most of us working at home now, what I have noticed is I have zero dry cleaning bill. I used to have a pretty hefty dry cleaning bill before COVID, but I haven't been to the dry cleaners in a year and a half. I don't pay them. You probably have the same thing.
Yes.
So
yes.
there are ways, you will find categories where you have probably changed, but this will help you to see where you can make changes in your budget. And then the other thing, what I want you to do is write down short-term, long-term goals. Is it to pay off debt? Is it to save for college? Is it to buy a car? Only you, and they will be individual to each of you, and you won't have to share those unless you choose to, but we'd love to know what your short-term and long-term goals are as well, so that we can help you talk about how you get there, because a budget is the way you get there. So that's pretty much it. Everybody knows their homework for next week, and I'm going to work on cleaning this up so that we can talk about getting your budget together and moving forward. So your everybody clear on homework? Any questions? Let's see. I see some chats. Let's see. Mint is a good app to use as well. Exactly. $1 a day is $30 a month. That's right. Yes, for all their spending. Yes. So imagine if you were spending $12 a day on Starbucks. One of the other things that a friend of mine does to save, and we'll talk about saving in the next class, is she saves based on the week, but she does it in the opposite. So there are 52 days in the week. 52 weeks in a year. So week 1, January 1, she saves $52. And the next week she saves 51. And so over time, by the end of the year, she has saved money for her holiday, to buy gifts, food, and that's kind of her method of saving that has worked for her. There are lots of different ways we can do it, and we can talk more about that next week. So come prepared to talk about those questions and the things, your short-term, long-term goals, and your spending expenses, what you've spent for a week, your spending journal, as we call it. So Pam, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Autrice. That was very informative. Looking to firmly be on my path. I know you answered questions. If anyone else has questions, you can Slack me and we can certainly pass them on to Autrice. Other than that, we look forward to seeing everyone next week for the Huddle. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.